And welcome to Free Advice Friday. This is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we're here to talk about the business of being an author, marketing, publishing, anything that you might encounter, whether you're indie publishing, traditionally published, or if you're somewhere in between. We're here to help you kind of sort out the ins and outs of marketing. So we have some questions that were emailed in that we're going to jump into today. And of course, we have people live asking questions. If you'd like to join us live, you're welcome to any Friday. We meet at newshelves.com/FAF. That is the link to our Zoom. It is free to register, but registration is required to join us live. So feel free to do that anytime we meet 10 a.m. on Fridays. So I will answer the question that's here in the chat first and then get into some of our email questions. Let's see. Please tell us about the soon upcoming changes with ebooks on Amazon. How will this affect us as sellers and as readers? I recently bought an ebook that is in my Kindle, and I promised the author a review this weekend. Will I lose this book? No, no, no. So there has been a lot of confusion about the changes that are going to happen on Kindle and on Amazon for ebooks. There's been a lot of confusion and a lot of, I hate to call it hysteria, but it's not that big of a deal. So here's what it is. As of now, when you download a book or you purchase a book on Amazon, you are able to download that book, meaning that you can download that book from your Amazon account and have it on a hard drive. You can put it on your computer, you can put it on your Kindle, you can put it, I don't know, wherever you want to that has a USB drive. So that's kind of how people have been doing things. Now that means that they've bought the book and they've downloaded it. This is not, let's say, for like Kindle Unlimited necessarily, although there are some tools that people use to get around that. But what's changing is that that's no longer going to be allowed. When you purchase a book on Amazon, on Kindle, it will only be available via Wi-Fi, meaning that you can't fully download the book. You have to be connected to Wi-Fi to read it. This, so many thoughts here. Part of this is they're trying to keep books on Kindle. So they are trying to keep people from downloading books on a USB drive and, giving it to their friend on Nook or doing something else like that. So that's part of what it is they are in some ways trying to safe keep books and keep them from being passed around. Part of it is they want people tied to Kindle. If people buy a book on Kindle, they want them tied to Kindle to where they have to be in their Kindle account. They have to be on Wi-Fi in order to be able to read that book. So that is part of it. And then part of it is, it's just a money thing. It's a business thing. It's a device thing. Not as many devices are using USBs and things like that. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Now, there has been this misinformation that means like you're going to lose all your books. If you've downloaded it, it's going somewhere. No, that's not how it's working. It's just going to change. And now, do I know exactly how it'll work? No. Why? Because it hasn't gone into effect yet. So I haven't personally experienced it. I can tell you, I do not think that Amazon's going to make it difficult or more difficult for people to read the books they buy on Amazon. That's not their purpose because that makes Amazon and Kindle a unfriendly user market. That's never been their purpose. That's never been their goal. They want people to be so tied to Kindle, to love it so much that they buy and read all their books on Kindle. So the actual details, I don't think we'll actually know exactly how it works until we get that update. And I don't remember when the update is going up into effect. Yeah, Cheryl, I see your question. I don't know exactly when that is going to go into effect. I know I read it. Let's see if I can find it. I know I read it in one of the articles that I was looking at. Let's see, it says February 26th. So that is going to change literally in the next week or so, and then we'll know more about how it's going to do. But really, users can still download books to their Kindle devices. I want to make that very clear. If you have Kindle Unlimited and you're going on a plane and you want to download a book and be able to read a book on the plane, you can still download books to the Kindle device. It is making it so you can no longer download a book to a USB or to a computer. So in essence, it is in some ways forcing people to use the Kindle app or a Kindle device and they're just keeping people from being able to download and transfer. So that is one of the things that's just going to make it different. And I think that's where some of the confusion has come, is the way that some people have been wording it makes everyone think that they're going to lose all their Kindle books. It makes everyone think that, I shouldn't use the words everyone, I'm doing the same thing. It's made many people think that they're going to lose all their books, or it's made many people think that they're no longer going to be able to download and read offline. That is not the case. It really is meant so that people cannot download books on a USB on their computer and then share them with other people. It's meant so people cannot download something on USB, and then, take it to another device or something like that, to a computer. So it is one of those things. I've even seen people in author groups saying, should I leave Kindle Unlimited? Is everyone leaving Kindle? No, guys, no, that's not what's happening at all. So I would not worry about that. I don't think we're going to see any change in the market. If anything, hopefully this will cut down on some people who do buy a book on Kindle and then they share it. They download it to a USB and they share it with a friend. And that could actually mean more potential sales for authors, not less. So this is not something I'm worried about. This is not something I'm telling people to pull out of Kindle Unlimited for. Um, it's a change, and of course, any change can be scary, but it's not something that I'm personally worried about. And I hope you don't spend your time and your energy worrying about this either, because I don't think it will really make a mark for most authors and even for readers. If you're using your Kindle in a manner that kind of falls in line with how it was meant to be used, you'll be fine. If you were, getting free books because your friend was downloading them, then you kind of had a pirated book and now you won't be able to do that. And that's the difference. And I don't think that that's going to be a big issue for any authors there. Uh, so there we go. Now for an emailed question. We had a question here from Eileen. Eileen sent me an email from the Authors Guild. The Authors Guild recently has announced that they're doing human authored certification. What does that mean? Do we need it? And what is it? Essentially, Authors Guild has put together a program called Human Authored Certification. And it's a project that allows an author to certify that their book is created by a human and not generated by AI. Meaning that this is something that an author can do for themselves, whether they are querying a book, whether they're publishing their book, self-publishing, whatever it is. They can get this kind of brand from Authors Guild saying that the book has been human authored. And so they're really featuring it. They're pushing it. Right now, it's only available to individual authors. It's not available to publishers. And as far as I'm aware, you have to be a member of Authors Guild, and it's only available for one title from one author at the moment. Now, that may change in the future for sure. This is something that Authors Guild has created. This is not something that is necessarily accepted industry wide. It's not required industry wide. It is Authors Guild attempt or movement to help differentiate AI and certified human. So it's kind of like when we say certified organic in the grocery store or certified gluten-free. This is for people who are going the extra step to have a certification that their book was human authored. Will this take off? Will it not take off? I'm not really sure, to be honest. I think at the moment AI is still so new that people aren't really concerned about it. Now, I do think we're in this in-between period where there aren't a ton of rules for AI. Do we have to have a disclaimer that AI was used? Do we not have to have a disclaimer? And so I think it's filled this gap. In the moment, I think that it's filled this gap of, well, we're not sure what the rules are. It's not clearly stated anywhere, so I can just get this certification from Authors Guild that my book was human authored. And I think, honestly, I think at the moment it's more to make authors feel better than necessarily something that the industry is going to use or require. I don't think that that brand's going to make a difference with getting an agent. I don't think that publishers are really going to consider it at the moment. Um, Partially because as they are writing contracts and things, a lot of the protections for publishers are already in their contracts saying that this is original work. You know, you have to disclose AI. A lot of publishers have already started to work that in their contract. So if it was not human authored, for example, then they have a lot of protections against that. And so I don't think this is necessarily something that the industry is going to use, as in publishers, agents. I don't think that's necessarily going to be a thing, at least not right now. But I do think that it makes authors feel good. Will readers care? I mean, that's a really good question, because will readers even care? Some readers know that authors use AI and they don't care because they're getting the content they want, they're getting it quickly. So I think that depends on the user as well. Um, I think sometimes that we think as authors that what concerns us and what's important to us is important to our reader. And the truth is that that's not always the case. In fact, many times it's not the case. The things that are important to you as an author, um, there's just no concern really for the reader. Like, they're not necessarily worried about whether or not you used AI to create a book. They're concerned whether or not the book is good. Now, if it reads like cheap AI, which I've seen those, they care about that, but they don't necessarily care if AI was used. They care if it's a good story. They care if it's original. They care if, different things like that. And so I think that's one of the things that, at the moment, it's something that is it's something that is more for authors than for readers or industry, in my opinion. The way that this works is you do have to set up a third-party verification service account. You have to verify who you are and verify your identity before you can get the human authored certification. Once that's done, they sign a license agreement for each title, and the author represents and warrants the book is human authored, meaning it was written, not that AI wasn't used for brainstorming or anything, but that it was written by a person and not AI. And then you get kind of a registration number that can be verified in a public database. So you can't use the mark, you can't use the human authored mark unless you have the registration number, unless you're in the database. That's not allowed. Um, and so the logo is protected and all that. So you can't just go grab the author and start using it. It's something that you do have to go through the process and use it there. It can be placed, I believe it's allowed to be placed on your book cover. And I think it may, in some cases, be able to be used on like social media graphics or on your website. Um, so those are kind of the rules there. As far as cost, there is a minimal, I think, let's see, the Authors Guild members, it's a free certification. So there's nothing there, but that may change in the future. So if you're an Authors Guild member, it's free, but non-members are charged a fee. I think right now it's like $10 a title. But again, that may go up depending on if it works or not. If if it works, if people are using it, how often it's used, what their load, if they end up having a lot of work to be done and they have to pull in more employees to run it, then they're gonna up their costs. If the sticker and everything is only as good as the enforcement of the program, meaning that if they aren't enforcing and having people, take down that sticker if they're not supposed to be using it and things like that, it's like a copyright. A copyright is protection, but it's only good if you use it. If someone's copywriting your, or they're stealing your copyrighted work and you don't send a cease and desist, if you don't go after them, just like a trademark or anything else, if you're not enforcing it, then it doesn't really mean much. So enforcement can cost a lot of dollars. It can be lawyers, it can be people scanning the internet and pulling down or sending cease and desist letters. So depending on how much that costs, their fees may go up as well. Um, so there's a lot of things. It's a very new program. They've been talking about it for a little while, but officially rolling it out and sharing it on a larger scale is new. And so that's one of the things to kind of consider. Am I telling people to run out and go get it now? No. No. I think it's a program. I think something I will be watching if it makes you feel better, if you feel like for your specific audience, it's something that matters, or if you've had an issue with people, using AI to recreate your work, or if you've had an issue with identity, such as we mentioned with Elle on Amazon, then it might be something that you want to consider there so that you can share it a little bit more widely. But for the average person, I don't think that it's going to matter to the reader. And as I said, I don't think it's mattering to the industry at the moment. That may change over time. As all things, this is a new program. As it gains traction, as it gains a name, it may be something that gets popular enough and, it's regarded highly enough that it becomes the standard that you need to have this done if you really want your book to stand up in the market. We're not there yet, though. Um, yeah, again, I don't think it's not something I would be going out and doing at the moment. But I think it's something to consider. And again, if you've had issue with AI, people using your book and running it through AI to make workbooks or cheap copies, if you've had people issue with people using your name to put out AI books or something like that, that's when I might consider it more. But again, until this is widely known and accepted, it won't mean much. You can have a badge that says it's author created from the Authors Guild, but guess what? Most readers don't know the Authors Guild exists. Most readers don't know what it is, if it's worthy, if it's credible. It's not, like now USDA, when we say it's USDA certified or gluten-free certified or organic certified, it only means something because over the years they've built that up as a brand and now it means something that you can trust. For most readers, Authors Guild isn't something they know to trust. We know as authors typically that Authors Guild has a stellar reputation and it's something we trust, but it's not something that authors really do. So I think it's kind of crazy. Yes, and now that we have to certify our humanity, I would like to just clarify there's a difference between certifying human creation and humanity. They are different. But I think it is absolutely kind of crazy. And how is AI use defined? You'd have to dig into the rules there. Overall, and what I'm seeing in a lot of the copyright cases and things like that is that AI is acceptable in brainstorming, it's acceptable in research, but any actual writing that is used, if say, take this summary and make me a chapter and you're using that, then it's AI. So again, it's generally accepted that if you're using AI for research, for brainstorming, for outlining, that's pretty acceptable. But any actual creation of content in any form, in any way, is considered AI use. And that would, that's one of the things. But Authors Guild may have their own rules. Those rules may change over time as AI becomes more popular and how people are using it or not using it. So there's a lot of things in there. Um, Check that out. But anyway, I think it's interesting. It's something I am watching. It's not something I'm telling everyone you have to go do this now personally. There may be others in the industry who think differently than that. There may be people who think that this is like a must do thing. Um, but only time will tell. And I think I've said this for the past year, past 2 years maybe, is that we're just in such a time of change that we literally are making the rules as we go. And this may become part of the rules, or it may become a stepping stone along the way of the rules, and we just don't quite know yet. So we'll watch over time. If as time goes by, if the program continues, I'm sure we'll hear about it again. And yes, if you're using AI to create anything. So to be clear, if you have a book of illustrations, a children's book, and you are using not digital art, if you're using digital art tools, that is different. But um, if you are using illustrations created by AI, then that would be AI creation. So if you are using something where you're typing in a prompt and it's giving you a character or something like that, that would be considered AI use. If you are using a digital art program where you're drawing on the art pad, then that is not, to my understanding, and to most rules. And I have to clarify that because again, we're making the rules as we go along. We're kind of playing the Lord of the Flies, except instead of being on an island, we are currently on Earth and we're making up the rules for AI as we go. And that's kind of how it's going is, um, we're trying things and then we're backtracking and going, that was maybe not our best idea. Let's make a rule about that. Let's protect that for the future. I feel like that describes much of life lately where we are pushing boundaries. Then, some people are backtracking, going, we should have a rule. We should have some structure. And that's kind of what's going on with AI and AI, particularly in publishing. We're seeing this a lot. Because we're in the business of creating content. And so it affects us a lot. AI in marketing a small business, like they're not so consumed with it because it's not affecting them. AI in those cases kind of paired with robotics to, for factories and things. And they made rules then and they tried things and some things went disastrously and some things really like changed our future and how things can be done. So um other sectors of the world and of commerce and production have already seen these changes in AI in different ways, and they've seen and made their rules. But for publishing, it's still in process. So it can certainly be difficult, I will say, but we could also think of it as, being part of history. And I think that's maybe a better way to think of it. A more positive spin, anyway. I can play Pollyanna. Let's see. How does graphic art compare to AI? Are graphic artists in danger of being lumped in with AI? Again, Kevin, I think that is one of the things that is being sorted out is that graphic art has been around for a long time. What's the difference between AI art? And again, point, we have universally accepted definition to uphold. The problem with everyone kind of having different definitions of what is or isn't is that then someone could be breaking a law here, but not here, but then sometimes here, and it'll be upheld maybe here. It doesn't create any cohesiveness to actually uphold a standard or a law. And that's why we're so mired in it, is because the world, the creative world, the courts are currently in the trenches of creating those definitions so that we have them to go by. And that's a big, big thing to get not only firm ideas of what is or isn't, but then to get a whole group of people, not just creatives, but creatives and courts and the common people. I say common people, but me, the normal people, to agree. I got so excited. I just like smacked my microphone off. Um, so it's a big job, and that's why it's taking a long time. And we're doing a little bit of trial and error and maybe we should have made a rule around that. Maybe we don't need a rule about that. And we're literally in the middle of it. See, do you have advice for timing, for example, time of year, to test a book's first Amazon ads? For example, I'd like to try ads for the first book in a three-part nonfiction set about Arctic exploration. This isn't a holiday purchase, so I wouldn't start then. But are there windows you found successful, or should I, for example, avoid summer months? Maybe one doesn't know until you try something. Yes. So I think this is one of the things for ads. I don't think there's necessarily ever a bad time to start ads, but I do like to think of your reader. If this is a nonfiction book, is it a nonfiction book that is going to appeal to university readers? Is it a nonfiction book that's going to appeal to teachers or, who's your target demographic and market? Think about when they might be available to read. It's very common for children's books to have most of their ads or a lot of their ads performing in November and December for the holidays, in April, because if you did not know, for children's books after Christmas, the next biggest book holiday for children's books is Easter. So around Easter is a huge time for marketing those books. And then, of course, we have summer reading lists. So we have a lot of people who will market in the summer. And that makes sense for children's books. If you have a fiction title, if you have, let's say, a women's fiction is kind of a funny one because you would think, well, Christmas is the best time to market women's fiction. They're all online. Yes, but a lot of women are not buying for themselves in December specifically, and they don't have as much time to read. They typically are going to be the holiday planners, the holiday shoppers. They've got kids who have concerts and all sorts of things. So actually a lot of women's fiction reading will slow down in December and pick up in January when kids go back to school and life calms down. Women's fiction tends to do very well in the summer when school is out, we're at the beach, we're at the pool. There might be a little more leisure time and not so many sports. So thinking about who your audience is may really help you decide when to test those ads and when your ideal sales periods, I can talk, might be. But I will also say if you're stumped, if you're just like, well, I don't know, give it a shot. You don't know until you try. So if you really can't pinpoint any of that, I would say just give it a shot. I would say that if you have a book you're not sure and you don't think it's like a holiday market, I would avoid those holiday times because ads can tend to be more expensive because there's more competition, more people running ads around the holidays. So you may decide to hold off, save your budgets a little bit and go at a different time. I think we're out of those holidays now. I will say, like, if you have anything tied to a romance, beginning of February is a rough time to run ads because obviously with Valentine's Day, there's a lot of ads running. But other than that, I mean, I would say start because you don't know when. I'll also say, even though these are Arctic exploration, so they're not necessarily winter books, Arctic exploration is one of those things. If we have snow on a cover, people think snowy times, like snowy times of year. So if you have an Arctic exploration book and you're marketing it in July, people may naturally kind of just skip over it as, oh, that's not for right now. So that's one of the things to consider. But working with a nonfiction for advertising and marketing. Nonfiction in particular is something, if it's not general self-help or support or something like that, it is one of those things that people typically aren't just browsing. They're not just browsing books and are like, oh, the Arctic, I would like to learn more about that. If you are that person, I want to be friends because I'm not that person and I want to know how your brain works. But most people don't do that. Most people are going, oh, I've been studying the Arctic for school and I want to find a book. Or I've had a interest in the Arctic for a long time. Let me go search a book. We go searching for a topic or the solution to a problem with nonfiction books in that range. So if it's not like memoir, if it's not general, self-help, we typically are going for a specific topic or to solve a problem. And so your ads, it may not really matter when you run your ads. It matters more that you're doing a tight target to get the right reader. You may have a hard time getting enough keywords and impressions. This is one of those things is when you have a book that's very focused on one topic, sometimes there's not a huge market. And that means it can be hard to get impressions because if people aren't searching for a book like yours, it's hard to get eyes on your book. I'm working on a book right now that has a little bit of that. So That's one of the things to consider is that it may just be hard to get eyes on your book. You're going to have to use a lot of patience, but having great keywords tying into your topics is really going to be, that's really going to be something that can help you there. And play the long game of having tight comps, tight keywords, Arctic exploration, scientific exploration, and different keywords around that. And just know it's probably going to be slow, but when you get the right people clicking over it, if your book is the solution to the research they want or the topic they're interested in, then they're more likely to convert. So no, it might be slow, but that also means you're typically not spending a ton of money and you can run those ads. Just be patient with them. With like I don't know, a literary fiction book, we can usually get a lot of data in like 2 weeks. With some nonfiction books like this, it can take a month or two to get full data information on ads to even start evaluating them. So be patient as you go through that. Let's see. Yep. All right. Meta issue. Meta issues ongoing since October. Yep. It still just takes a long time. I will say I've been dealing with a meta issue that started in August. We have gotten better in degrees, but we're still waiting on a last piece for a client of mine. We just got an update that they're like, oh, there might be a problem on your account. Let us look into that. This has been an ongoing issue for literally months. We've had multiple cases, multiple case numbers. Keep in mind, most of these people are shuffling around different cases. It's not the same people. So you literally just have to be dogged in your persistence. Send the letter again, ask for another review, ask if there's something else you can provide. And that's literally all you can do because there's really no control over Meta. If they have given you an issue with an account, they've paused an account. The other thing I've noticed with Meta is that when you get someone on the line or you get a response, you have to respond quickly. So monitoring those cases, monitoring your Facebook business page and your messenger in your phone, if they're going to call you, monitoring those very closely and responding quickly is absolutely key to getting any help from Facebook because literally I think you're in this long queue and then they get you on the phone and it's like you have them, but if they can't reach you, if they're like, hey, we have a question and you don't respond like that, then they're like, okay, well, you're just gonna go down to the bottom. So that's one of the things I would say. Yep, you're gonna get people who are not helpful, and you just have to be endlessly patient and kind. You will win more flies with honey. So thank you. That's not my issue. Can I please speak to someone else? How can I escalate this? And you also have to know exactly what your issue is and what you want done. So if it's the instance of, for example, verification of payment. I have verified my payment. I have verified my identity. I've sent this, and this. I would like access to this. What more can be done? What can you suggest? Bringing them on and not just what you did, but what can you suggest? What suggestions do you have? And again, endlessly patient and dogged persistence is the only answer. Sometimes you don't ever get the response you want, unfortunately, but I have had a lot of success with those two things. It's not quick, it takes a lot of time, and you just do it over and over again, unfortunately. We don't have to like it, but I'm afraid it is kind of what the deal is there anyway. Yep. It's always a dedicated team who has never read your file before, who doesn't care, who you have to tell your story to all over again. It is unfortunate, but that's kind of what it is. Yes, Jean, your question is next up on my screen actually, so I'll answer yours. Jean had a question here and they say, I have a client who would like to advertise his books at different airports. He noticed a freestanding stand in an airport outside of a store with a book advertised, including the QR code to their website. Can you guide me where to begin researching this? So there are a couple of things this may be without actually seeing what this person saw. I can't be certain, but there are a couple of things. A lot of airports actually allow you to buy advertisements not through a bookstore, but through the airport. You can, in fact, just like you can buy space on a billboard, there are many times when you can go to an airport and you can actually advertise um, and have an advertisement there, like a billboard. You can have it on the wall and different things like that. If you're interested in doing this, know that one of the highlights is you don't have to go through a bookstore. And so there's that. Um, one of the hard or difficult things is that you can promote your book, but the QR code does great if someone is reading ebooks. If they're in the airport store and they want a print book and it's not carried at the store there, they can't go buy it and they may forget about your book. So just make sure that if you're doing that, if you're advertising through an airport system, just make sure that your book is something that people are willing or able to read on audiobook or ebook. Make sure, like, this is not for children's picture books if they can't go buy it at a local store. Parents will forget about your book before they ever get home, I promise. So if you're interested in doing that, then you would be going to individual airports and asking the airport about advertising opportunities there. Usually they have a management company and you can kind of ask and find out things there. Um, if you are working with like an actual store, now sometimes they do actually have kiosks in stores. In that case, you're advertising through the person who is running that. And this is one of those things where it's a lot of boots on the ground. It is, if it's a kiosk, many of those are run by large companies. People making these decisions don't even step foot in a airport. And so that is one of the things that you might consider is that it's going to take some work for sure. If we're talking about airport bookstores, I have written about this quite a few times, so I will put the link to the blog. So if you go to newshelves.com for anyone watching on Facebook or on the replay, go to newshelves.com. We have the little search icon and you can type in airport and you will pull up several blogs that I've written about how to pitch your book to airport stores and kind of what what's considered. So I will drop some of these in the chat. But the basis here is that it is hard to get into airport bookstores because they carry very limited quantity. They are ordering from wholesalers. In most cases, they are not ordering direct from publisher. They're not ordering from a small publisher or anything like that. They're ordering from Ingram or other large wholesalers. So that's one of the things to consider. Also know that they are typically looking for only specific kinds of books. So in airport stores, yes, you do see, a shelf usually of nonfiction. This is usually going to be connected to that specific location or business books or well-known celebrity memoirs. That's usually what's on the business section or the nonfiction section. If we're talking about print books that are in the fiction section, most of it is going to be mysteries, thrillers, and women's fiction or romance. They do tend to carry more romance and women's fiction in the summertime because that's when they sell more. That's when, more people are traveling for leisure. But thrillers, very popular because typically they're standalone. You can kind of read it on a flight or a trip. Mysteries, again, not so much series, but standalone mysteries or mystery authors. Then you'll have a very small section of young adult, and these typically are going to be very well-known authors and titles. Something that anyone would kind of recognize. It's very, very hard as an indie to get into a airport bookstore with young adult. Children's section is actually a little bit larger and tends to also include like books, but also coloring books and stuffies and different things like that. And so there will be a section there as well. And again, they're looking for books that can be bought wholesale at a trade discount. They require that they be returnable. They're looking for price barcode. If you don't have a price specific barcode, don't even try. They're not interested. So those are kind of the things. And also know that you may, in some cases, you can go to individual bookstores at the airport, ask, speak to the manager, and ask who makes the purchasing decisions. Usually, in my experience, specifically with Hudson Bookstore, there are regional areas for ordering. And what happens is the regional managers set what's allowed to be ordered, and then they kind of have like their own separate approved catalog. And individual managers will order from that based on what's popular in their area and what they know is selling or is out. So that is one of those things. So it's an uphill battle getting into a bookstore, especially if you don't have proven sales or you don't have something that ties to that specific location. But you may be able to get into advertising in an airport by being creative and going around the bookstores and going more to the airport there. Um, and that may, again, it's kind of like when you're running an advertisement, a bookstore is so helpful because people are looking for books to buy. Let's compare it to Amazon and Facebook. Amazon ads can work really well because people are already there. They're looking to buy, they're looking to shop. They're in the store with their credit card in hand. That's the bookstore. Doing advertising at an airport with a QR code is a little bit more like social media marketing. You're telling people about this product, but they weren't really looking to buy anything. So your conversion is probably a little bit lower, but you'll get some great exposure. You also have to consider pricing. Sometimes pricing is hundreds of dollars, depending on the airport. Sometimes it's thousands of dollars. So you certainly have to look at that as well. And you have to consider are you looking for ROI in just book sales? If you are, it's probably not going to equal out. If you are looking at it as an overall campaign of awareness and branding, then your ROI is going to look a little bit different because you're not just looking at how much you made in book sales, you're looking at your overall brand and what you're getting there. So those are all things to consider, ways to get in. Again, I did drop some links into the chat, and if you're watching on Facebook or a replay, go to newshelves.com and search airport in the search bar, and you will see a couple of articles come up there. What do I think of the new free Apple audiobook conversion? That's actually been around for a while. The Apple audiobook conversion is AI. It's pretty good for AI. I don't like it as much as human narration. We'll see how it goes over time. Most places have actually had some AI opportunities for audiobooks for a while. KDP has virtual voice. Apple uses their own. So that's one thing to know is that most platforms are only accepting AI narration that's done within their own platform. You can't make your own AI audiobook and bring it over to different places. It does list it on the listing. Some people don't mind it. Some people hate it. It's not my preference still. I think I have one author, for example, who said, this series is not very popular. I know it's never going to pick up an audiobook. It's not my bestseller. I want it to be more accessible. So I did AI audio. And they did it with intention. Now, this person also has sold their rights for audio to publishing houses who work in audio, and they've done that for their other books. So they very are choosy in that. And I think that's the way to go about it is if your book is currently selling well, if you have opportunity, I would invest in a human narrated audiobook that can go everywhere that you can control. If this is more of an accessibility issue, or you're saying this book's never really going anywhere, then sure, play around with it. But for your books, Richard, in particular, for The Dawning, it's not something I would personally recommend there. Let's see. And you can listen, by the way, if you go onto Apple. I've done it before. If you go onto Apple and you just search like AI narration, it'll pull up books that have that AI narration on it. You can listen to them. Um, They don't have a lot of emotion. They do pretty well. I found that sometimes it's difficult if you have male and female in there. The voice doesn't necessarily change. So if it's a book with a lot of dialogue and you don't use a ton of dialogue tags, you don't know who's talking, because if there's a paragraph of dialogue, or not a paragraph, a page of dialogue between two people and you only use a couple of tags, it's impossible to know who's speaking sometimes because the tone doesn't change always. And so that was, for me as a listener, was frustrating. But AI audiobooks also tend to be much less expensive to buy. So I guess it's a trade-off for people. Let's see. I have my price low on Amazon, but I may start going to local stores. Is it all right to raise the price a little bit to pay host store? I I have my personal opinions and I have what I think is standard. There are some self-published groups and authors who will say, well, just raise your price for bookstores. Um, this is not recommended. This is not standard. If you're going to have your price for your book, then you need to have your retail price everywhere. If Amazon decides to sell it lower, fine, but your retail price should be the same everywhere. You're probably not a big enough publisher for the FTC to be coming after you, but typically, I'm no lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is only as I understand it. But there have been cases where the FTC has actually gone after people for having different retail prices for different people because it creates an unequal marketplace. So, can Amazon sell a book for whatever they want to? Yes, but the retail price should be the same for them as it is for other markets to give equal footing. So, yes, there is more of a cut for your prices with bookstores, for example, because they need a full trade discount so that they can, which is 40%, by the way, so that they can make a profit on the book. But then you're selling the book through, let's say, Ingram, and Ingram also wants their cut. So rather than getting your 60% from Amazon, you are getting, what's that? So 55, you're getting a 45. Split from bookstores. It's a lot lower of a split. And from that, you are also having to pay the print cost. Profits for stores are going to be lower because there are more people involved. Amazon has kind of cornered this market because they've created the sales platform. They're getting paid there already. So they've cut out the middleman, which means they can give authors higher profits when selling through Amazon. But that does not mean that we should be charging bookstores more for our books. And certainly a bookstore is not going to want to carry your book if you're asking them to sell it for more than Amazon is selling it for, because they're already going to have a hard time, or they're already going to be trying to sell a book from a new or unknown author in their store. And on top of that, if people can get it cheaper on Amazon, then it's a losing game. It's not a good investment or a good business deal. So they're not likely to want to take your book. So that I do not recommend. Also keep in mind, if you are selling your book through a bookstore, through a retail store, please do not bring them an Amazon copy of your book. They will know. It's an immediate no there. You really should be bringing them Ingram Spark copies or letting them know that the book is available on Ingram for that. Oh, what do I think about an author narrating their own book? I think that is a great question. I think some people are brilliant at it, and some people need to know that it's not their gifting. And I think that's a hard thing. I think that if a author, especially in nonfiction, I will say for nonfiction, self-help business, an author narrating their own book is very popular because that nonfiction tends to be in the author's voice, their personality. And so that is something that's often coached and worked on so that they can narrate their own audiobook. And I think that is a really smart thing to do. It ties into podcasting and branding and so much more. So I think that if an author is able, but I will also tell you, I have heard self-published well, actually, I've heard traditionally published authors too, who have nonfiction books who narrate their own books. And it's like, oh, maybe you should have just recorded a little note in the beginning and let a professional do that. And so know that sometimes it just may not be it. It takes a lot to captivate people with your voice when you are the only one talking. You have to have energy, you have to have intonation, you have to have a lot of things that go into it more than just being able to read the words on the page, which is, of course, important as well. Now, for fiction, it's a little bit different also because this is not just reading a book, it's bringing characters to life. It is knowing how to imply an accent without laying it on. It's the difference of a little bit of a southern drawl and "Bye, y'all. I guess we're going over here now." No one wants to listen to that. I don't even care if the character is supposed to have a super southern voice. Please don't. So it's really having a subtle touch. Some authors can learn this, and it's part of what they enjoy is kind of acting. Some aren't or don't. And so some people do really well, very subtly having a feminine voice and a more masculine voice, and you go up and down. Some people don't have it. I don't think I would have it. I really don't. And so I would not be narrating my own fiction titles. So I think that you have to be honest with yourself, with your skill levels. And also, I think that you need good coaching. I think that you need to have the right equipment and you need to have an honest team. You need to have someone in your corner who's not a yes man. I was actually talking, I was in a group chat of mine with a bunch of people in the industry. We were talking about how we very often make authors cry. Um, Not because we like to make people cry, not because we like to crush hopes and dreams, but because I would rather be honest with you and say, hey, this doesn't work, or this needs to be completely redone. I did that with a manuscript recently. I said, I'm so sorry, this like it's not there. And I would rather do that than to see you fall on your face in public. And so while we need our hype men around us, we need our people who are going to just be there. We also need people around us who are going to be very honest and who aren't trying to be harsh, but who are going to make it very clear if something doesn't work. And so I think that's one of those things is don't be in an echo chamber that you've created for yourself. Be in a chamber of people. Have different groups if you need to. Have your hype cheerleaders and the people who are going to pull you aside and be like, hey, I love you and I think you're awesome, but this isn't everything it could be, and I know you want it to be. So make sure that you've got that and be honest with yourself. If you try it and it's not your skill set, it's not narrator skill set to write a book often. So know that sometimes you can do everything. That doesn't mean you should do everything. And that's with a lot of things in publishing, from cover art to narration to editing. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, and doesn't mean it's going to give you the product that you really want in the end. So there we go. All right. I think we're right there at 11 o'clock. So I think we're right at the end of our call. You guys, thank you for being here. Um, yeah, I do. I make people cry, but I'm so nice about it. They're not even sure if they want to cry. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next week, 10 a.m. Eastern on Friday. If you have questions, you can always email them into info@newshelves.com. And of course, you can join us live at newshelves.com/FAF. See you guys next time. Have a good weekend. Bye, everybody.